The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. And be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. You can find us on social media. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X, where we are at SQPN, and on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt, at sqpn.com/merch. It's a great way for you guys to support our show and to show your love for J.R.R. Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. I'm Thomas Salerno, and joining me today on the panel are Patrick Mason. Hello, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
And Alix Murray. Hey there, Alex.
Hello, gentlemen. Good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
And Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas.
All right, so this is our big Season 2 wrap-up extravaganza for the Rings of Power. But before we dive into that, Jeff, you have a couple of news items for us.
Yeah, nothing major. Basically, there's still no official Season 3 renewal, so we're still waiting on that.
It's not officially official.
Not officially official, yeah, as I noted. The only other thing of note that I saw was that War of the Rohirrim, which is coming out in about a month and a half, it will actually use archived audio of Christopher Lee for it, since Saruman will be in there. So rather than go the AI route or
thank goodness,
any of that nasty business, they are using archived audio of Christopher Lee. And
so like what they did with Carrie Fisher in Star Wars 9.
Yeah. I think they had already filmed some stuff. But yeah,
right.
So I don't know how much, if they'll get like a.
So they don't have any phenomes or anything like they did with Majel Barrett in Star Trek.
I don't know. I just saw that they were using archived audio, so I thought that was a good way to honor
maybe
him
from his years from when he was Dracula.
Well, I was just thinking, I feel like Christopher Lee would appreciate that his voice is now back from the grave because all the horror movies he was in.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, that's all the news that I saw. So just stay tuned, as maybe we'll get something by our next episode.
Awesome. And you also have a plot summary, just brief synopsis of season 2 of the Rings of Power.
Yeah. So let's try to sum up the whole season. So which was a little bit of a challenge, but I think I did. Good luck. This season, the elves begin to reuse the Rings of Power, but learn that Sauron is at Eregion. So Ranitar, as we call him, begins to twist Celebrimbor's mind as the dwarven rings are forged. King Durin wears his ring and it warps his mind, causing further risks with his son, and eventually leads to him to delve deeply into Wake the Balrog. Meanwhile, in Númenor, Miriel's throne is usurped, and Pharazôn persecutes the faithful and sends his son to start recolonizing Middle-earth. Nori and not Gandalf go east to Rhûn and are separated. Not Gandalf meets Tom Bombadil, and Nori meets the Stores. Not Saruman, or the Dark Blue Wizard, captures the Stores. And not Gandalf is actually named as Gandalf. Nora leaves with the Stores, and Gandalf stays with Tom. Galadriel is captured by Adar, who is marching with the orcs to kill Sauron, but she escapes. The elves also march to Eregion and fight Adar's army, but face defeat until the arrival of the dwarves. Saranitar causes Adar's death and retreats with the remaining orcs while the elves regroup. And in the kind of the final montage, Elendil goes to the west of Númenor to join the faithful as Isildur sails home, and the dwarven Game of Thrones begins.
All right, but before we dive in, because I plan to basically cover each story arc on its own as kind of our way to get through this. But before that, I'd just like to get you guys, now that the season's over, overall impressions, look back at this season. And Alex, we'll start with you because, and you were not on us with us for the first season. And I know you had thoughts about the first season too. So, but the Rings of Power overall, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll be honest. So I have a couple of things. I don't know how much you want me to go into this rant. Although, so basically, I will be watching season 3. If there was a season 3, I will watch it. I have to say, I was motivated or inspired to watch season 2 based on the reviews of episode 1 and 2 of season 2 by all of y'all. So thank you for that. And I don't regret it. And I found myself, and this is always a good sign for me if I'm watching a series, if I'm thinking the day before, oh, tomorrow is the next episode. That's always a good sign for me. I never had that thought for the first season. I couldn't get past, I don't think I watched 3 episodes. I was like, this is just, forget it.
Those first 2 episodes are rough.
Oh my gosh. Well, so I watched season 1 in order to maybe get context for season 2. And so when I watched season 1, I was like, well, there's like 12 hours of my life I can't get back. It was just, I'm sorry. It was just, I really didn't like, yes, it's like, now what am I going to do? I can't get that back. And so I don't feel like, and do you know what? I think you could just read a quick summary of season 1 and watch season 2 and you'd be fine. Because the contribution was just probably in the negative. Sorry for anybody who really thought it was amazing, but it wasn't. I don't know. I'm sorry. So season 2, I'm left with a little more hope. And, you know, I have been a Star Trek fan since I was 6 years old. So I know how to slog through a lot of garbage before you can get to the gems. I'm used to that. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to season 3. I hope there is a season 3, but I'll save kind of some of the things that I think need to happen in season 3, maybe further into the discussion, because I don't want to take it over with my. Sorry, I don't want to sound uncharitable, but I don't think season 1 deserves my charity.
Totally understandable, honestly.
See, I told you, Patrick, I'm going to kind of be a little more on your side.
So, Pat, let's round off the cautiously optimistic train of thought here.
You know, I enjoyed season 2, and the weird part for me is I enjoyed things about it I thought I wasn't going to, and I felt the flames across my face about things that I thought I was going to really enjoy. It was a very strange experience. I thought I was going to love the big set piece battle at the end, the destruction of the good Austin in Eregion.
I forgot about that.
But like that whole battle to me just but I actually enjoyed Galadriel's character this season. I enjoyed everything with Sauron. He is fantastic. Him and Celebrimbor, everything with that, are all the conversations. And it was all the stuff that I didn't like from season 1, like everything about Galadriel, and I mean Halbrand was enjoyable. But all of that stuff was just so painful in season 1, and then so good in season 2. And I think in a lot of ways, season 2, it makes season 1 more watchable if you know, like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
And it's not an oncoming train.
That's right. Yes. Like, and you get, okay, and granted, this was a writer's kind of cop-out, but you get the reason Galadriel is the way she is, even though she really probably wasn't as much that way. Anyways, the characterization is still very painful to watch, but there's at least a reason for it presented in season 2 that's believable. And so it was a very strange go through on season 2 for me, because like the things I was like super excited for the battle, and then we got there and I'm like, this is awful. I don't. But everything, all of the characterization stuff was was great, and the dwarfs have always been good. Like they have been like the one steadfast good thing throughout the whole show that hasn't been, in my mind, terribly problematic. So
my husband would say that's because everyone's from Glasgow.
Yeah, that's right.
that tracks.
Cosmic is Glasgow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wouldn't go that far. Sorry.
No, knowing nothing about Glasgow. Yeah, you're
well, I know
right.
one or two things about Glasgow. It's like there parts of Mordor probably are in Glasgow.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jeff, how was your reaction in this season?
Oh, I love this season. I mean, I know I dogged on the Nori and not Gandalf storyline, and I think that is for me the weakest, even though a lot of people seem to love that more than the Numenor stuff. But I enjoyed the season overall, and I still like season 1, but I think season 2 did improve quite a bit. And yeah, overall had great. Even though the battle, I will agree, Pat, the battle was kind of disappointing. I don't think I disliked it as much as you did, but I wish it was more. I wish it was bigger. But I did enjoy overall. But yeah, it was a great season. I think the dwarf stuff, the Numenor stuff was in the Serenitar stuff was all great. And I'm hoping they will officially renew it pretty soon. I think it's kind of unofficially renewed at this point. I think it's being written right now, probably some pre-production, but yeah, I'm excited to see what they do next. But yeah, overall, I had a great time watching it. It was like every week it was like, all right, we get to see the next one. So, which I was excited like that for season 1, but I feel like I was even more excited like that for season 2. So, but yeah, overall it was a great season for me.
Yeah, on balance, I enjoyed season 1. It was an odd experience watching it because of how so much, was not what I expected, especially in those early episodes, and how I seemingly went into denial about the obvious hit you in the face, like hints that Halbrand was Sauron. So it was very odd, but some of those later episodes, especially I think the episode that was called Udun, I really enjoyed a lot. But I thought season 2 was a huge improvement, though. I felt that a lot of the rough edges and poor characterizations that season 1 had were kind of smoothed out. I feel like the show is hopefully past its growing pains stage, and we are now into full on, hopefully, we have more episodes that land than not. I felt that the stuff that was strong in season 1 got even better, like the dwarves and Numenor and Adar and the orcs. So yeah, I enjoyed this season a lot. Alex, like you, I have a thing that tells me if I'm enjoying a show, but for me, it's that if while I'm watching the episode, I start talking to the characters on screen as if they can hear me. And I try to interact with the show. That is my sign that I'm into it.
I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that with Scooby-Doo when I was growing up on Saturday mornings.
I think I also did that with Scooby-Doo.
And I've always done it with Star Trek. So.
Old Man Joe.
It's Old Man Joe. Can you not see it's Old Man Joe?
The clues are there.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, don't split up, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah.
But in any case, yeah, I really think that this season laid down a good foundation for them to go into the future with what essentially needs to get done before this show is over. But before we get into predictions, though, we have a bunch of story arcs to go through, because that's another thing that I felt. If I have one major criticism about this show is that I feel sometimes it lacks focus because you've got so many story arcs going on at the same time. Yeah. And as we've said, kind of the weakest of those we'll start with is Nori and Gandalf in Rune.
Oh yeah.
Where we have
Let me just climb up on my high horse.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we're all there with you.
Yeah,
on this horse.
Come on, guys. No.
We're like the four riders at the beginning.
Exactly.
The ruined folks with the masks.
Yes, suffering from some horrible curse.
Okay, Alex, I know you've got some stuff saved up for
okay,
this.
So I really thought about this, and I'll tell you the moment I was like, whoa, Alex, what's going on with you? So I want to be sympathetic with all the free peoples of Middle Earth. I think that's a reasonable approach, right? And I have been ever since I started visiting Middle Earth. And when the Goon, is it the Goond?
Goond, I think.
The Goond. When she was slapped to the ground by the rider in the mask, and I had like no sympathy for her. I'm like, wow, what is going on, Alex? And I'm like, I was like, yeah.
Like cheering, and then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not on the right side.
Exactly.
Here.
And I think it's because, so these are supposed to be the predecessors of the hobbits whom we know and love. And when we think about the Third Age, the Third Age is like a degradation of the Second Age, suggesting that the Second Age, everyone is a little bit better, right? And the Harfoots, the store's not as much, but the Harfoots are the most unsympathetic characters I have ever come across in my life, like looking at any kind of entertainment. And I think part of it is they're stupid. They're just stupid, and they don't make any sense. Like, if they're nomadic people cannot be stupid and survive. They have to have some kind of intuitive wisdom and dignity. And I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I had an anthropology professor who used to say that only in villages do you have village idiots.
Yeah.
Because in nomadic peoples, the village idiots would get picked off very easily. Exactly.
And they're just, and when they run into things, or if they get scared, do you know what? Certainly in season 1, but even a little bit in season 2, whenever they were like some kind of danger, their reaction to it, I just was expecting like the bongo drum roll from cartoons in the background. Do you know what I mean? Like running in place like they do in Scooby-Doo when they're scared. Yes. And I honestly, like, that to me was like, that's not how somebody who's like wise in what would you call it, wildcraft and living off of the land. That's not how people like that respond to anything. And so, and as I've said, living in a place that is kind of like the Shire, especially the Harfoots, I think the store's slightly less. There's no dignity there with those people. And I find that, and everyone loves the hobbits. Everybody loves the Shire, and can see themselves in the Shire. And so I don't know how it's almost like city people observing people who live in villages and in the countryside. And they're like, oh, this must be what they're like. It's like in the Marvel films when you have Nightcrawler, kind of his story arc, and he's always mumbling some Catholic prayer. And I used to say, this is like whoever wrote this knows somebody whose grandmother might be Catholic, and this is how they're doing it.
Yeah.
There's just,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
exactly. And so I don't understand. So they're going to have to make some kind of major improvement on these people in order for them to make sense in the Third Age. And because I can't get from the Second Age to the Third Age with these people, and with Nori, every other monologue out of her mouth is like some Sam Gamgean monologue. It's like, why didn't you just go get a bucket of water? You don't need to talk about it. Just go do it.
Yeah.
It's not epic.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was, but I think somebody on our Discord said that like almost all the hobbits in this are Sam.
I think that was me.
Was that you? Okay, because Nori's like Sam, Poppy's like Sam. All the major hobbits are Sam.
And they're not. Yeah, but they're not. That's the point.
But they're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a pale imitation of
Why
Sam,
don't you just I don't know. Like if I had to have somebody like that, if I had to drag somebody like that around with me, I think I'd kill them.
They are more like the D&D stereotype of halflings than hobbits.
Yes. And nobody wants to be that.
If you have the choice, what you could be, a real genuine hobbit or the tabletop gaming idea of what a halfling is, you choose a genuine hobbit.
Yes. And as I said, to make sense of getting from where they are in the second age to the third age, where they're clever people and they're good people and they're like, they don't want to eat snails and sticks or whatever. Do you know?
That's like my neighbor's dog just eats sticks and rocks.
Yeah, and then they and then they vomit it up and eat it again. You know, I mean, it's like I just can't do that. And then I think the other thing is watching the second season. What is it that makes Gandalf love these people so much? There's nothing to love.
Like,
I mean, they're
just familiarity, I guess. They're like the first people he ran into.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
I think it's kind of the implication is, the Hobbit saved his life, so he's sees an inner something in them that no one else can see, so he's gonna always have the affinity for them. I mean, moving forward with the storyline, I don't know how. I mean, I know they're going to be in season 3. I don't know what they're going to do. Like, are they just going to add them to every the Harfoots meet the elves now, and they're going to hang out with the elves for a while, and then they're going to meet the Numenorians, and they're going to meet the dwarves, and they're going to meet the Last Alliance. Like, are they just going to beat? Like, I just don't know what they're.
Yeah, what's the plan for these people? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Whereas for Tolkien, everyone kind of explicitly goes, who are these little hobbit people? They don't know anything about them, really.
Even Sauron didn't know about them until...
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were like this mysterious little... it's almost like Eru Ilúvatar kind of had them in a secret little garden. And when it was time for them to emerge and play their role in the great saving of Middle Earth, they came forth.
Speaking of people who are kind of secret and tied to Eru Ilúvatar in strange ways, what did you guys think of Tom Bombadil in this season? Alex, that face.
It's great. I don't even have to say anything. I just let Alex go, and I'm like, it's good. This is good.
No. Well, you might disagree with me on this. I actually thought I saw shades. I was really I couldn't figure out how they could get him right.
Yeah, I had the same thought.
Very difficult. Having said that, I did like more of him than I had expected. I'll leave it at that.
I just felt he wasn't. I liked what they did, but I felt he was toned down way too much. He wasn't jolly enough. But I feel the reason why they did that is because they know more people have seen the films than read the books. And so they know that the average viewer is not going to be familiar with what Tom Bombadil's really like. And I think they were afraid that if they made him as authentic as possible, people would accuse the show of having jumped the shark with this weird character.
Yeah.
And so but still, the authenticist in me wants Tom to be mostly himself. Like, I liked those moments of levity and goofiness that they did include, but I just felt on the whole he was a bit too serious. A lot too serious, really.
Well, I think part of that was that they were, within the story they were telling, they needed Gandalf to choose the power of friendship over power. So they needed Tom Bombadil to be a little bit more stern. So within the story, that makes sense to me. So I think in the next season, if Tom is in the next season, he might be more of they might kind of go more into the Tom that we know, because at the end of the very last part of the show is them singing the song together. So now the song can begin. So
that was such a beautiful moment.
I wish that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so now I think that they could go into the more Jolly Tom now, but I don't know if they will. We'll see what they do with that. Because, that storyline in Rune now, I mean, one criticism for me, among many for this storyline, is the Dark Blue Wizard didn't do enough. Like, they set this guy up as something really interesting, and he didn't really do much so far. He killed one of his goons and then kidnapped the Harfoots, and that's about all we saw him do this season.
He is the kind of villain that I referred to as Lord Boring, which is the kind of Dark Lord who just sits in his big chair and issues commands to his lackeys and doesn't really do anything.
The claw.
The claw from Inspector Gadget.
Curse you, Gadget.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So I liked finally when he did confront Gandalf, but that just also confused me more, because I'm like, who is this guy? I really hope it's not Saruman, because he's not supposed to turn evil and want to replace Sauron until very much later.
That would totally mess up everything.
So I'm like, so who is he? I think
he's one of the Blue Rivers, but if I could just go back, I guess, speaking of Gandalf, and maybe I think this was the issue with Tom Bombadil not being Tom as much as we were expecting. One of the things when you read Tom Bombadil, the characters around him are like confused. Like they just don't know what to make of him.
Yeah.
But the problem is Gandalf, when he was not Gandalf, he was confused by everything. Do you know what I mean? Like everything was confusing to him. So that's my issue with that character.
Mm-hmm.
I just, again, it's just like, he was just didn't make sense. There were some things that were maybe instinctive that he didn't even do. Like going back to the first season when Nori's father had hurt I almost said his foot. And of course, weirdly, they make them go to the back of the caravan. And there's at one point where like Gandalf is sitting in the wagon and having this poor little injured Harfoot drag him around. Like instinctively, big man, you should be dragging all the little folk behind you. So he just never had any, he just didn't, I just can't believe that the Valar would send someone that unaware to do anything.
And strip all his memories.
Right.
That's what I mean. Like even like something as instinctive as put on some clothes.
Speak.
Speak.
Yeah.
Maybe help this person who's, a third your height and who's injured. These are things that are almost instinctive. And so by the time he got to Tom Bombadil and the wizard, who I think is one of the Blue Wizards, he just didn't have the wherewithal. Like, how did you survive this? Surely it's not, it can't be because of the Harfoots. I'm sorry.
Iluvatar's grand plan. He knew he would meet the Harfoots and they would teach him the power of friendship.
I suppose.
There's only so much hand waving you could do, Jeff. No, I'm good.
Well, he came on a meteor, so presumably he was.
Don't remind us of that.
Gandalf was with Iluvatar probably instead of in Valinor, because if he was in Valinor, they would have just sent him on a ship probably or something.
Oh, you mean like they were supposed to do? Sent him on a ship.
Yeah.
Speaking of ships, and I want to move on to this plot line because there's a lot to talk about.
I had one more note on the Gandalf storyline. So Pat did call. I didn't notice this on my first couple watches, but when I was rewatching the finale yesterday, I'm pretty sure that the stick that Gandalf picks up was from the tree.
Oh yeah.
I didn't catch it. I know you talked about it, Pat. I didn't catch that was that, but I saw like Nori like move a stick and I was like, oh, that's Gandalf's stick. And I guess I wasn't thinking that, like I was mixed up where they were. So, but I noticed that. And I mean, I don't think we commented on it, but I wanted to comment on it now.
Yeah, I think
Pat. I was going to say, Pat, you look like you want to say something. You had some thoughts.
Of all the storylines, there's things I would tweak, there's things I would change, but generally speaking, they were decent enough plot lines or storylines that I wouldn't like wholesale rewrite them. This, on the other hand, I would have done completely differently.
Yeah.
I don't think, honestly, while I love seeing Bombadil like in person, I don't think he was necessary. I think what they brought in with the Blue Wizard at the end, with the whole, hey, I'm your friend and I'm going to teach you, that should have been the initial thing. And it should have been this slow discovery of Gandalf to find out, what was actually going on. And we would have gotten more of Rune, and we wouldn't have really needed the Stores or the Harfoots anymore.
Yeah. If at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And the problem with the Harfoots for me is the fact that they left Nori's family behind, and like all of the songs they sing about, like, nobody goes off trail, and like how it's important to stay together, and then they leave this family behind because the guy got his foot hurt because the leader of the tribe's wife told him to do something. And I'm like, you guys can't band together to help one of your own. Oh, and
then they talk about burning their wheels of their caravan. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right. I just,
yeah.
You guys are not like,
they're not good people.
Right. And it's difficult to sympathize with a group of people who's, we'll cast out and kill our own if they're going to hold us back just slightly.
Yeah.
Which, again, is not what historically and archaeologically the hunter-gatherer people have done. I mean, we have archaeological evidence dating back to Neanderthals that they helped people who were injured, including older individuals who had no more teeth and couldn't eat anymore. We had evidence that they were feeding them and keeping them alive. Yeah. So it's like, that's not, like you said, Alex, it's like what city folks' idea of what quote unquote primitive people are like.
Yeah. I mean, and even, there's even evidence. And the other thing, here we are, we're just going on. This is going to be like the hating of the Harfoots episode. But the other thing about it is, how hobbits love their fat ponies, their fat little ponies.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what could be more perfect than a caravan of little hobbits and their beloved ponies? But there aren't any. Everyone's dragging their own cart around.
Their whole thing is they're trying to hide, and if you have a bunch of ponies, you can't really hide them.
They don't even hide well. I'm sorry. So there's just a lot of things that maybe I think it's people who don't, this is going to sound so sad on my part, who don't think Middle Earth is real. Do you know what I'm like when I go into that universe? Like, I'm in it, and I just don't have. I don't necessarily want to visit this Middle Earth yet. Maybe Khazad-dûm, maybe. But does that make sense?
Oh yeah. It
Whereas
doesn't feel like in the Jackson movies, you're like, oh, I want to live here. Yeah.
Or the books.
Or the books, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even if you have to, get through all of Christopher Tolkien's footnotes, you still want to, they're like, oh yeah, because this is like a real world. I need to know the population of this area, and it's just not there yet. Yeah.
And it's kind of like tonal whiplash, I guess, from the Harfoots to Numenor. Now, I thought Numenor was one of the strongest elements of season 1, and I think it gets even better this season. Jeff, I know you're the big Numenor Gondor fan here, so I want to give you first crack at Numenor. What did you think of the story arc this season?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. Like I've said before, I love the Numenor stuff in season 1, and I think it, like you said, I think it got better in season 2, and you get even more development of Elendil. You get him kind of finding his faith, which he started to toward the end of season 1, where he was initially like kind of skeptical, and I kind of was thinking in season 1, like maybe because his wife died and she was kind of one of these faithful people, like he kind of fell away from that. And then his son kind of, and then they both together, like him and Isildur, kind of start to rediscover it at the end of season 1. And then of course they get separated, and then he's back in Numenor with Muriel, and yeah, I loved their relationship, and almost like kind of starting to maybe become romantic, but then ultimately they're separated because she's sending him kind of like, you're gonna be the leader of the faithful, because she has to remain as kind of like the figurehead behind, as kind of the figurehead of representing the faithful within the capital, because she's basically she's in prison. Even they're calling her the Sea Queen, but we don't really know yet if that's like, is that kind of an ancient honorific title, or kind of what we don't really know what that, like, are the people kind of for Tarmariel, but the ruling class are for Pharazôn, so it's going to kind of set up a conflict there. So and yeah, it was seeing the faithful, like seeing the shrine episode where you have the faithful in their death ritual, I thought was really cool, and like getting more of their culture. So yeah, I loved that. I loved it. And our guy Kemen, who I still think he's going to be the Witch King.
What an awful origin for the Witch King.
I know.
No.
I'm a Witch King.
Well,
Stop it, Kemen.
He's not cool enough, Jeff.
Well, I'm not saying he's cool, but I think he's dumb enough to be the Witch King.
Oh, okay.
I think we've talked about the Nazgul aren't very intelligent.
Maybe he could be. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, once they get the rings, they kind of just become...
Oh yeah, and the farther away they get from Mordor, like in the books, the stupider they get.
That's true.
Yeah, but I mean, but Sauron is going to Mordor, and what's close to Mordor now? Pelargir, and who's in Pelargir? Kemen. So
okay,
I had the joke
maybe he could be the mouth of Sauron.
I've heard that theory too. I've heard that theory too. So
I could see that. I hadn't thought of that before, but that might actually be perfect. He's as much of an obsequious, like, people pleasing bootlicker to be the mouth of Sauron.
No, really, what do you really think, Thomas?
Bootlicker. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I think he could be the Witch King, but we'll see. I had the joke that if you've seen Mean Girls, it has them pulling up and saying, "Get in, loser! We're going to Mordor," and we're going to Mordor, and it's Sauron pulling up to Pelargir. Yeah. So we'll see what Kemen, because I think he's going to be setting up, making the Ents mad, because there's the two Ents that are around, and they're demanding a tribute of timber. So I think it's going to kind of set up the people of Pelargir, the Southlanders who live in Pelargir are going to rebel against Kemen. And maybe the Ents are involved too, and it's going to drive Kemen, either to Mordor or just to death. So
I hadn't thought too that since he sort of failed in the eyes of his father, that Pharazôn is doing that thing that they used, you do to a disappointing son in ancient times, where it's like, send him to the colonies. I can't deal with him here.
Well, and speaking of that, Pharazôn did say your mother prophesied you will have an ill end. So I don't know what's worse than becoming an undead ghost and a servant of Sauron. So
a big mouth.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I loved it. So
yeah, Numenor was probably one of the strongest throughout the entirety of both seasons of the show. And there was no disconnection between season 1 and season 2. We had a forced disconnection with the not Gandalf, and I still, every time I think about it, I still have flames across the side of my face for him being Gandalf. I just anyways, we moved on either way. But there's a forced disconnection where he goes off to Rune, and there's a weird disconnection with the elves mostly because of Galadriel's characterization change. But did she
really change?
Yeah, I know. But, in Numenor, it's you got the same characters all the way through, and they're just continuing on their course, and their characters are kind of showing themselves as they move. And I love the kind of little deep dives you get into Numenorian daily life and how it was for individuals there. That was a lot of fun. The visuals were amazing. And my only problem with it is just this nagging in the back of my head. I'm like, the time scale is all wrong. It's just all wrong. Right. And it just keeps repeating. It's like a drum beat in the back of my mind. drums in the dark.
Yes. Drums in the deep. Yeah. Yeah. I think I liked the elves slightly better than I did in season 1. I did not. Galadriel as an individual, I find insufferable, and I don't know. Again, how do we get from? I guess it is going to take you 2,000 years to be decent. I don't know. I can't get Galadriel from that character. She's just really. There's nothing. I don't see how she would be a leader of anybody. And there was one part where she tells Elrond, I guess when they know that the orcs are coming, when they're like going out trying to get to Eregion to tell Celebrimbor, look, Sauron is actually Halbrand. And there's this little argument at the bridge, and she decides like, I'm going to stay behind, whatever it is she says. And Elrond asks her why, and she's like, so none of you get slain. It's like, oh, really? Really? And then she gets herself caught. And nobody addresses the fact that because she stayed behind, then she became a bargaining chip for Adar. Like, nobody brings that up. I would totally bring that up. Like, once we're together again, I would go,
they don't address the consequences of her impulsiveness. Like,
exactly. And because trust me, if I had been there, we would be having a conversation, a very serious conversation. And they just don't do that with her. And I'm like, how does she become, again, I think it comes down to dignity. There's no dignity in her character. Mm-hmm. And Galadriel is the personification of elven dignity
and wisdom,
and humility. Ultimately, humility.
Right, because humility is, and correct me, humility is knowing who you are, too.
Yes.
And it's like, even if you're in this exalted state, being comfortable in that and not lording it over people, because people who lord it over people are actually people who have an inferiority complex. So, like to be like a real
Kemen
leader.
And Pharazôn.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so again, it's just trying to get from where we are in the Second Age, which again is supposed to be it's less degraded than the Third Age.
Mm-hmm. You still have those echoes of the First Age.
Yeah. And you know what? This just occurred to me. This is the problem with how people see culture anyway. So, we have this, I don't want to get super philosophical, but, you have this Hegelian idea that today is better than yesterday because it's today. Like, we are obviously so much more advanced than people were 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. No, we're human beings, but this is this idea that we're progressing from less than to more than, and that's not true. And it's especially not true. I don't think Tolkien saw reality like that at all. And that's why he wrote, that is what makes Middle Earth so accessible, because the reality is we are in a story. We're just not in our story. We're in somebody else's story.
And that is a good segue back into Numenor, because you see that Numenor is greater than Gondor, which comes after.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you also see the slow degrading of Numenor itself, even in the architecture, because you can see how they've been plastering over the old elven style architecture from the time of Elros to now this very Mediterranean what is that civilization called? The Minoan style architecture of Numenor in the present. And it's just going to degrade even further once Sauron gets there. So I like that. I think in that story arc, they're getting that right. Whereas in everything else, there's this kind, and it's almost like Sauron is a being of progress. He wants everything to get quote unquote better by creating these rings, by quote unquote advancing Middle Earth.
And that
stage.
tracks. Yeah. I think that's good because we know he's evil.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's a liar.
He's just misunderstood. He just wants everything to be orderly. I'm kidding.
I know.
And then they do bring that up where in his mind,
it's just so good.
But I like that. And this is jumping ahead of it a little bit. Celebrimbor says, you think that, but you're really deceiving yourself,
yeah.
And we're going to see more of that when he gets to Numenor. But I think what they've said, despite the timeline compression, I think they've set up a great stage for once Sauron is there, he's going to run rampant in this place. I think Pharazôn was handled great. I really do think they're going to skip the whole he marries Muriel thing from the books. I don't think that's too Game of Thrones for this show. I don't think they're going to do that.
It's going to be a 2-episode spread. I think the wedding.
I've had the theory or the thought that maybe he offers her, like, if you marry me to legitimize my throne, I will, stop persecuting the faithful. So I could see if they do it, I could see it from that side.
That could be a way in. Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to do like a forced marriage type of thing like you would see in Game of Thrones or something.
No,
but I could see it doing something like that. And then, of course, he's gonna go back on that deal and
absolutely.
If they do that that deal of a marriage, he'll go back on it, of course, to eventually, and maybe Sauron's involved. Maybe Sauron comes in and
that would be interesting.
Says, if you marry your cousin Lord Pharazôn or King Pharazôn,
this will make peace. That's
we'll get the faithful on board, and
you'll marry the Sea Queen and you'll be the Sea King.
Now, one of the things I want to say about Sauron is I really loved his reveal to Celebrimbor. I thought that was absolutely spot on, and how you would have this really arrogant being who's not supposed to do that does this, to the point where Celebrimbor thinks, oh, I need to worship you. Mm. He's like, oh, no. And when you contrast
humble brag. Yeah.
Yes. No, I'm just here to help you. And when you contrast that again with any interaction, I have to say any interaction between Sauron and Galadriel was disappointing to me, because his reveal to her in season 1 was very anticlimactic. Because I knew, the minute he helped her up on that floating, flotsam and jetsam.
The second thing he says, you're like, that's Sauron.
Totally. And then I'm like, I can't sit here and pretend like everybody doesn't know who he is and I know who he is. This is ridiculous, And
our season 1 panel just denied it the whole time.
Yeah, we were.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I know. And I'm like, I can't do that.
I was just like, what? I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
It's like,
to me it makes it so funny looking back on the reveal moment where I was like, but for me the reveal moment was actually when he says, it is a gift, and I was like, you've gotta be kidding me.
I know, and I just think all of the interactions between him and Galadriel were disappointing. And this idea of, and this is where they got it right the second time around. In the first one, we're supposed to be sympathetic to him. Like, you can't be sympathetic to evil. He's not like a person gone bad. If only his dad had loved him more. No, he, out of the box, was evil. And there's no trying to. But of course, again, this is what we do in our culture. We try to see, with Maleficent and all these things, like somehow you're sympathetic to evil, and that's
except when we don't. That's the weird thing. Nobody tries to do that with Hitler. It's
exactly. So do you know what? Give it time. I had this conversation with my youngest, and she's like, well, how is it that, because she hates Napoleon. as we all do. And well, I don't hate him. I hate what he did. And and she's like, but people, when they portray him as almost being like heroic and all these things, and he was this mastermind, and I'm like, yeah. And she goes, and she said exactly like, well, we don't do that with Hitler. And I said, give it time. This is the problem, and especially when you degrade what actually was happening. And so with him when he was in Eregion, we were like, you are so scummy, the way he would interact with the other elves and like you. And so I don't want to say I liked his character because I didn't, but he wasn't trying to convince me to like him.
Sauron? No.
Yes, that's what I mean. He was like really, and he was vile. He was vile.
He was exactly what he should have been from the get-go last season.
Pile of goo.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, that, but
and I loved that. That was so
really
cool.
okay.
I mean, just because you think, that's who he is. He's just gross.
And also, like, it's like what he is on the inside, Yeah. And it's also like, how does a spirit build a new body? Like, I thought it was an interesting visual for how, because, he's got to build, as Aquinas would say, an aerial body. He's got to build a new temporary body out of the matter around him. So what does he do? He just consumes living beings to. I just thought it's very Lovecraftian. I thought was, and I that scene, by the way, where that first scene where the season starts off, where it's him and Adar, and he's trying to get the orcs on board, right? And he's like, "I am your only future." But it's like, I really liked that.
He was like, that whole scene was like the opposite of the incarnation.
Oh yeah,
because there was nothing beautiful. It was consuming and hideous and gross and hidden and yucky.
Well, I mean, even the part before it where he is like in front of the orcs trying to tell them, I'm the guy, right? But he's not in elf form, or he's not in orc form. He's in elf form, right? I'm not like you, right?
Yeah.
Which is
better,
juxtaposed with the incarnation. Like, I'm not like you, but I'm your lord.
Exactly.
So good. Everything was Sauron.
It was, So I think that they've done, but again, when he was having that battle scene with Galadriel, there were times when I was like, when I just didn't like it. I didn't think it was very interesting, that fight. And I just felt like, when she fell off of the rock or she jumped off of the cliff, whatever she did, and she broke her fall with the tree, whatever. And he just looks at her. I'm like, wait a minute, you've been fighting for that ring. Can't you like be a bird and just jump down and get it? Do you know what I mean? No, he's just standing there like, oh my gosh, she fell. What? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you're ruthless. You want that ring. So again, it was just this thing so that he didn't get the ring. And I'm like, isn't there a better way for him not to get the ring? Like, she just doesn't confront him.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not, according to the books, he's not even supposed to know she's one of the ring bearers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
there's just so many.
The interplay though between him and Celebrimbor for me was another one of the highlights of this season. And I've seen interviews with both these actors, and I can tell, one, both of them really love the source material. And two, like, they just were committed to putting their all into these scenes. And I think they really do. It was so, seeing Celebrimbor's slow degradation and then his sort of redemption only to be, it was so tragic. It was almost Shakespearean. It was beautiful,
Yes. I think he redeemed himself. And then when he curses Sauron, by naming him Lord of the Rings. That's not a title of honor.
Right. You're a prisoner. He says,
and he was.
And he says, hear me, hear the dying words of Celebrimbor, which in Middle Earth has power. To curse somebody with your dying words is, and I think that's part of the reason why they have Sauron shed tears at that moment, because in his heart of hearts, he knows Celebrimbor is right.
Yeah, it's not because he skewered him.
No,
it's all for himself. He weeps for himself.
He weeps for himself. Yeah, exactly. Look what I've been forced to do. And it's like, come on, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
Look what you made me do.
I know. If it weren't for,
that was brilliant, by the way, when he's like telling him the whole, look what you've done to yourself. I'm like, you want to reach into the screen and choke him to death. Oh, there's a thing where, like, also when Celebrimbor says, I will be born back to Valinor on a wind that you can never follow. Like, I'm like, yes, the winds of Manwë, the Lord of the Valar, that you can never touch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked before, like, maybe he could, if Sauron was humble enough to go to the Valar and, he could kind of go through the Melkor treatment, but he never would. He's not humble enough to do that.
No.
Too vain. Yeah,
he's all pride. Which is, that encompasses all the vices.
What did you guys think of his interaction with the old man at the beginning, where the old man is trying to give him like an out and he doesn't take it,
Oh.
That's after he's Guron.
You mean not to go toward the Southlands or whatever he says? Like, if you go this way, if you go that way, there's only death or something like that.
Yeah. What did you think, Pat?
I really liked it. I liked everything they did with Sauron. I even enjoy most of the stuff from the first season with him. The insufferable portions of the conversations with Galadriel are very much insufferable on one side of it.
Agreed. Gosh, can you imagine?
Oh my gosh,
being around her.
Gosh. She's like over 1,000 years old at that point, and you're like, "Are you just stop and think for 5 seconds?" And he says that to her. But anyways, I really enjoyed that interaction in particular to set up the what happens throughout the course of the season especially with Celebrimbor, and also setting up the conversations with Adar that happen over the course of the season. And I love it because it is this sort of like, you almost feel like it's Ilúvatar talking through the old man saying,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
You could give it up and come home. And he's like, nope.
Exactly.
I heard one theory that the old man is actually Eonwe, the herald of the Valar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because in the books, he's the guy who offers Sauron the chance. And Sauron basically skips his parole hearing. He doesn't show up. He misses his court date. And so is condemned in absentia, basically.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think one of the things, really thinking about what is it about this place that doesn't make sense to me, and that makes so much sense in Tolkien's writing, and Patrick, you kind of brought that out, and it is the presence of Eru Ilúvatar. This is his story. Middle Earth is his story, all of it, and it's all his creation, and yet in this he's nowhere really in there. It's not his story, and in the same way that in our culture, in our world, people want to carry on as if God is not sustaining everything, every moment of our lives. Right. All of existence.
Us along in existence.
Exactly. And they want to pretend like he's not there. And when you try to ignore him, your story becomes very boring and very two-dimensional. Yeah. And I think because Tolkien really felt like God was with him in the creation of this universe, it shows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in this and in this series, if you have people who are not who don't have that inherent understanding of reality, just like everything else that kind of collapses and becomes boring, that's what happens. So I'm hoping there were a couple of hints that they might be bringing in the reality of Eru Ilúvatar a little bit. Tom Bombadil holding that lamb. And
oh my gosh. Yeah, I was like, what do they mean by that? I was like,
fire and the
secret fire. Even last season where Sauron mentions on the raft in the illusion that, I felt the hand of the one again after Morgoth's defeat.
Yeah.
But then
you just want to say, no, you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's all part of the deception. I was like, no, I think I actually said that to the screen back then. I was like, no, you didn't. I'm like, shut your mouth. I'm like, you did not.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's one of the things that makes Galadriel so insufferable, especially in season 1, but even often in season 2, because she still has this "it all relies on me" complex, which I get is a Noldorian trait. Like the Noldor were very much like that. And she is, somewhat related to Fëanor. But at the same time, she's supposed to be on the wiser end of that spectrum.
Right.
At least by this time.
The Finarfin, who are supposed to be the wise ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And to get this character that is just like, I have to do it. It's all on me, all of it. And I'm like, you literally lived with the gods for hundreds of years. And to think everything relies on you.
Yeah. And you know what? I have to say, I liked the subtle, I will call it a subtle change, but maybe it's just because I got to know him a little bit better, of Gil-galad, especially towards the end. I really felt like, when he was trying to heal Galadriel after she fell, and with Elrond watching him, then I'm like, okay, I can see where Elrond became this great healer in the Third Age. And I really liked his character. I mean, he was a little aloof in season 1, but in season 2, he really, to me, started to become this merciful, just leader of the elves. And maybe it was the ring. He had submitted himself to the reality of the ring. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I actually see that. Yeah. It becomes less about his own plans and projects and more about where the ring is guiding him.
Yeah. That's where I did really like him. I'd like to see more of him in season 3, if possible.
And Círdan
in that
also.
Direction.
I would like to see more of him. Yeah.
Well, he also
with the beard, please.
Right.
I didn't like. What was him? Who shaves with a shell?
Círdan.
We were joking. It's Shillette, the best an elf can get.
Yeah, Shillette.
The meme that we saw.
Yeah, that was like, what is going on? Yeah, that was weird. That was it's stuff like that.
One of the things I saw that maybe the reason Círdan was kind of doing that was the ring kind of made him feel young again, made him feel like he did back in Valinor.
Yeah, that I get. Well, not Valinor, but Cuiviénen probably.
Yeah, but he was fairly young.
Oh, right.
I mean, didn't he grow his beard in the Third Age?
I think maybe.
Ish. Depends on the source that you read it from. You definitely know he
Tolkien?
has a beard, right? Well,
no, I mean Tolkien, especially when you read the nature of Middle Earth, you see that he changed the elvish life cycle over and over and over again. So maybe
that's true, but I
do kind of like that reading of it where he feels younger, and so he goes back to the second stage of life that they have.
Maybe they could have just
Well, for him and for Gil-galad or Gilgalad, shoot, and the name's gone. Either way,
which one?
But the
king of Noldor, Gil-galad.
Gil-galad. Him and Círdan suddenly have a new purpose, kind of granted by the rings, but also by Sauron. We come at them at the very beginning of the first season. And evil's been defeated and Middle Earth is just doing its thing. And now it's, they're basically getting ready to go home. It's time to go back to Valinor. Let's call it quits. And Gil-galad knows that no, it really is time to call it quits because we're all about to die if we stay here. So that's his whole purpose at that point. And then once he realizes Sauron is there and I have a way to sustain my people here, the whole thing opens up as okay, I have a whole mission and a purpose now. And I think Círdan is that way too. He's like, okay, I'm not just like gearing up for the final crossing. I actually need to help continue to sustain my people. And
yeah, like, I'm going to be here for a while.
I'm here for another 4,000 years. Aren't I?
Yeah. In it for the long haul.
Well, and one thing, to go back to Galadriel for a second, I think it's, I mean, I understand the criticisms of her and the flames across your face, Pat. I feel that to some extent myself, but I think it's also, they wanted to give her development, and it's hard to do development for an eternal or an immortal being who, you know, after a certain point doesn't really age anymore. So I think I think at least their intention is like, we're going to start Galadriel here as an impulsive young elf, and then by the end of the show she'll be the Galadriel that we know. So I get that. So
wouldn't she be? Sorry, I understand. Okay, go ahead, please. And then I have to say something.
Different things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I think that's the intention, or I hope that's the intention, and it's not just like we need, you know, a warrior princess in the show. So
yeah.
Well, but then I would say to that, Jeff, you contrast that with Legolas in the Third Age, because he's roughly the same age as she would have been. He's a little bit younger than Galadriel in the Second Age, correct?
Yeah,
he's like 900. He's like 900 years old.
Yeah, he's like
she's
less than
about
1,000.
Yeah. And yet he has more about him than she does.
Yeah,
I just think she's a badly written character.
The warrior princess part is totally forgivable. It's the impulsiveness issue.
Oh, see, the warrior princess thing for me is just, I want to punch her.
I don't mind that much.
I know. That's because
they also haven't said what happened to her.
You know what?
Well,
it probably,
that's because I got to see a thumbnail.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where, so now, not to get into like the difference between men and women in how we view Middle Earth, but I mean, I don't need you to like do anything in Middle Earth to make me feel like I can be part of it, because I'm already a part of it, you know? And so to make this character who's supposed to be relatable to women, or how women are supposed to be or want to be, I just find that insulting, you know?
Yeah, I can see that, because it's just like, even like, you know, when Luthien goes on the adventure with Beren, her role is not to swing a sword around. Her whole role is to use her magical powers to, you know. So
yeah. And the thing is, the women of Middle Earth, not a lot would have happened without them. Like, some major things wouldn't have happened had they not simply been true to themselves. You know? I mean, the Witch King, you know, Kemen didn't get defeated, although that is pretty sweet that Kemen gets defeated by some chick.
And a hobbit.
and a hobbit. You know, if that is, I just can't see Kemen as the Witch King. I think Pharazôn, that would even be sweeter, because it'd be so humiliating.
Kemen could turn into the Witch King from the animated Return of the King movie, who's such a loser, and his voice is like this, you know, like
yeah, exactly. But I just think, you know, so the fact that they were trying to make her like this girl boss is so, I find that it's kind of like over here, not to get into too much of the weeds, but I think at one point they were, the Rugby Federation wanted to change some of the rules of rugby in order to appeal to women. Like, they wanted to have more women watch rugby. And I'm like, excuse me, I've been watching rugby for 25 years. And if you make it like, you know, not as exciting as it is for me, that's insulting. You know, I think, you know, or like, you know, the Lego, we have to have girl Lego minifigs. Have you never thought of just switching the heads around? You know what I mean? It's like, whoever does that? Mm-hmm. But again, I just think it's appealing to, I don't know what they think they're appealing to, but I would have to say they're not appealing to actual warrior women. There.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes. I have spoken.
Yeah. Speaking of, I want to get to Adar and the Uruks, because that was another thing that I really liked this season. I just think that Adar such an interesting original character, especially last season with once the reveal that he was one of the original elves transformed into the orcs, and they reveal more about that transformation in hints this season, when he talks about his transformation and the twisted sacramental imagery that was used. That was very effective, and just his story. And I know some they do not like the humanization of the orcs, and the fact that they can have families and whatnot. But I feel that I get that orcs really, they may be twisted and depraved, but they don't want to work for Sauron. They would just rather do their own thing.
That's true. They have more dignity than the Harfoots.
And with the family thing, they've got to come from somewhere. I did see, though, someone say that the problem is not so much that there are baby orcs. The problem is the idea of orcs having family units. Yeah. When they're so depraved, they wouldn't have a nuclear family structure. But whatever. I was willing to let it slide, to just be like, oh, that's it. It gave Glug, or whatever his name was, a reason to do what he does later. But
which was weird, because he talks to Sauron for 5 minutes and he comes back and kills his father. I don't get that. What was that all about?
Well, I guess it was the bores, like Adar says, he bores a hole into your soul and slithers in. But
I think
you're right.
Glug had just seen Adar just throw waves of orcs at Aragion to try to kill Sauron. He was just he knew Adar, and I don't know why. I think part of it is Sauron twisting him, because Sauron is going to end up killing him anyway, and would have just wasted orc lives probably more than Adar would. But I think it was just not to get political, but it's oh, there's someone in here for change, calling for change. Maybe they can change things drastically, and so
Sauron, change you can believe it. Oh my gosh.
The Who song, here's the new boss.
Yes. Same as the old boss.
Same as the old boss. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Yes, and yet they are fooled again and again and again.
That's right. It's the tragedy of the orcs.
I know.
That they keep getting under the foot of these cruel masters.
Well, and, Adar was trying, I think he was sincere in trying to make that deal with Galadriel. If you help us defeat Sauron, we will go to Mordor and we'll never make war on the peoples of Middle Earth again. And I don't know that that's necessarily I think eventually they might have, but I think he was sincere, because he was under the influence of the ring right at that point. Yeah.
Is that when he kind of was restored a little bit physically?
Took away his scars.
Yeah. So there was that little bit of good. So it was a little bit of a redemption arc for him, which actually I won't even say a little bit of a redemption arc. It was good.
Oh, full blown.
I liked Adar. Even when he was bad.
Yes, it's very strange, because you can get behind what he's doing, in the sense
his argument makes sense. His position makes sense, and you're like, okay, maybe I can negotiate with this person. Yeah, there is no negotiation with Sauron. His every offer of his should be so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. As soon as you start negotiating with Sauron, you've lost.
Yeah,
exactly. You give him legitimacy.
To talk to him, it's that's over.
yeah. And I think it's sad to say that they've done a better job presenting Sauron not as a sympathetic character, but as a believable character. But they haven't done that with Galadriel. And can we please? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring this up at this late stage. What the heck? Elrond smooching Galadriel?
Oh,
gross! Seriously?
Especially when you know their history later.
I know.
He essentially just
what?
smooched his mother-in-law. Yeah,
I know. Oh, can you imagine? Oh my gosh. And like, you know,
I know why they did it, but it's still
I don't know why they did it. Yeah. Why did they do it, Thomas?
Well, it was that's
Jeff,
how he was,
yeah.
Well, I mean, it was so he could slip her the lockpick. Was like
that. Ew, making it worse. Oh no, sorry.
It was so he could.
It was in her hand. I was like at first going gross.
Well, when it first happened, I was like, did they do like the thing from like spy movies where you kiss somebody and you pass something through the kiss?
So disgusting.
Luckily, they didn't do that.
Yeah. No,
it was all gross. It was all gross. I'm sorry.
It was unnecessary, is what I felt about. Yeah.
If they hadn't done the music the way they did the music, it would have been fine. But they did the music like it was this whole romantic thing, and it was a culmination of something. And I'm like, guys, he slipped her a lockpick, and this was a distraction. Like that's
like he could have, he
could have kissed her on the forehead, and it would have.
And like ran his hand through her hair and like just stuck the little pick in her hair. I don't know. It was gross.
I just feel like the whole thing was
maybe he just needed to gross Adar out so much that he would. I
liked her face when it was over because Galadriel's face was like, "What the heck did you just do that for?" Like,
it just what I didn't even. I was like, I'm gonna go take the dogs out.
My other thought when I first my other thought when I first learned about it, because I was spoiled that before I saw the episode that was in it. My first thought was they clearly did that as rage bait. They were just trolling the audience, like. But worked. I don't know if I think that now, but it's like,
I don't know because I mean I don't think they're trying to make fans mad. Like I don't think they're trying. They are, and sometimes, but I don't think they're. I don't think they're trying like some other popular content is like, we're going to do this controversial thing because it's going to be controversial. And
you mean like Star Wars?
Yeah. Or
I was thinking that, but I wasn't going to say it.
I'll just say it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, they weren't trying to rage bait anybody. It's
just badly written. It's just, I mean, there are so many things that could have been like done in a certain way. And I don't know. I just didn't, I did like Elrond, because he was more dwarvish than he was elvish, I guess.
I think he's great. I think they definitely got the kind as summer Elrond vibe for him.
And I can see, not this actor, because this actor doesn't look anything like Hugo
Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. He doesn't look anything like him, but I can see how Elrond becomes Elrond of the Third Age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah,
that character makes sense to me. Because he's just he doesn't get easily ruffled. He's just, that's his personality, and it's like that all the way through. He likes people. He sees the good, and you can also see his relationship with Durin the Fourth, how that made him open to welcoming Thorin and company, and because he had that history with the dwarves and the love for the dwarves, and maybe wanting to see Khazad-dûm restored, or Moria. You could see him wanting that stuff to happen, and so he was open to it.
And speaking of Khazad-dûm, I've loved both in this season and the first one getting to see it in its prime when it's not Moria.
Yes.
And I'll still nitpick the fact that we have two Durins simultaneously, which should not be. But if they had just named one of them something else, it would fix that. But I loved the relationship between Durin the Fourth and his father, and that scene where Durin the Fourth just kind of breaks down and he's like, that he's still my father. Lost and far away, but he's still my dad. I can't do this to him. And that was, for me personally, emotionally affecting.
And I also liked the relationship of the dwarves with the mountain.
Yes. Yeah. It's not our mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's a living thing. It's a thing that has its own purpose and personality. That's what I like about it.
I think that's very Tolkien. That's very Middle Earth.
Yeah, that's what
the
I
way
mean.
It should be. Yeah.
They're stewards of this natural thing, or this thing created by Iluvatar or the Valar, whatever.
Yeah. Whereas a lot of the things that are inanimate, shall we say, like the rings and the staff, in Tolkien's universe, those things had agency. And in this one, they don't really, or maybe they're like so obvious, like the sparkle of the rings. It was like too on the nose. Whereas I think the way they presented the mountain having its own agency was very interesting and well done. And you could understand why the dwarves would love it so much, and they would love mining and how Gimli just fell in love with Helm's Deep.
That's right. I was thinking of that, where he talks about just like not even mining for stuff there, but tending the stone as if it's like a garden.
Yeah. It's like he sees it in a totally different way. Yeah.
And I'm so glad this season that the Balrog did not destroy Moria, that the timeline hasn't been compressed that much. That they know it's there. We got to see it wake up for a bit.
Yeah. It's like that scary dog behind somebody's fence, and you're like, I hope that fence holds.
You're right. It is like that. Yeah, definitely.
Sandlot forever.
Yeah. If you don't hit any baseballs into the yard, we'll be fine.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't dig under the fence, we'll be fine.
What did you think of how the dwarven rings of power and their effects are portrayed in this season, guys? What did you think?
I mean, I think that was pretty faithful to Tolkien, because it for the dwarves it amplifies their greed. The dwarven rings do, so that's pretty, I think, fairly accurate to what we see in the text, because Sauron wanted to use these rings to control men and control dwarves, but the dwarves, it didn't really control them. It just kind of made them greedy, and maybe to some extent Sauron wanted to divide the peoples of Middle Earth. So I mean, to some extent it worked, because it made the dwarves turn away from being good and being cooperative with other peoples a lot of the time, but it didn't give them that utter control like the rings of men do. So I think the dwarven rings were portrayed pretty accurately, and it was pretty sad seeing the fall of Durin, of King Durin, and I'm curious to see, because they do linger as the season's ending on a shot of the ring just sitting there of Durin, Disa, and Narvi looking at it like ominously, like so. And because Durin made that promise to Disa of not wearing the ring, but I wonder if the Balrog wakes up, or if there's some big thing that happens. And Durin's like, the only thing we have, this ring made my father stronger. Maybe it'll make me stronger, and I can, solve this problem.
But wasn't that ring destroyed?
No,
it was sitting on a pedestal at the end.
No, sorry, in the universe, wasn't it? I mean, because Gandalf said this is what's happened to the different rings.
Well, actually, Durin's ring is one of the three that Sauron gets eventually. Yeah,
okay.
He takes it from Thrain.
That's right. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
I really liked how they portrayed the rings, at least so far. And what I enjoy about them is how they show what they do, right? So the three rings of the elves, what do they do with that? They heal the tree, which somehow is interconnected to all the people. But either way, they make it so the elves aren't going to fade into ghosts or banes or whatever. And they can exist in Middle Earth, right? So it has this sort of healing, connecting power. And at the same time, it gives the elves more purpose on the shores of Middle Earth, right? And then you go to the dwarven rings, and the power they give the dwarves is primarily knowledge. It's knowledge, and it's knowledge of the mountain, right? And just and I don't think a lot of people understand the way minerals are in mountains. It's extraordinarily haphazard, and just because you find it in one place, you might find, oh, this is a really awesome seam, and then you mine it out. There could be an amazing one 10 feet further into the stone, but you don't know that, right? Because it's a rock. You can't see it. But suddenly you have this intimate knowledge of the mountain. And that has and these rings, having been a little bit tainted by Sauron probably have his greed or lust for power sort of built into him, and so that then falls into, okay, now that I have the knowledge of this place, how do I use it to build myself into power? And what I hope with the 9 is that they are just raw power. Like, that's all they grant the men who get them. There's no knowledge or wisdom or healing or anything. It's just power and long life. And all that does to men is twist them.
Because that's what men desire.
Mm-hmm.
Power and long life.
Yeah. Whereas, this relationship that the dwarves have with the mountains is similar to what the elves have with Middle Earth as a whole.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the knowledge that they're getting, because do you know what? They already had a knowledge of the mountain, but it was a relationship knowledge.
Right.
Whereas
I'm saying these are the things I'm willing to show you, and I'm going to reserve this stuff for me.
Exactly. And then with the rings, they gain this knowledge of, it's kind of like the difference between like crony capitalism and oh my gosh, now I've lost the word. It's the Catholic understanding of economics.
Catholic social teaching.
So,
kind of like the solidarity kind of understanding. Yeah.
Solidarity. So So I think it's that change in what you do with that knowledge. So they go from having this relationship with the mountain to wanting the mountain to submit to them.
Yeah. Like what Durin the Fourth says, Father, it's not our
exactly like mountain. That's not how we look at things, and
it's not a property relationship. It's
exactly
we just rent here.
Essentially. Yeah. This is something we preserve which is how Gimli saw Helm's Deep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think one thing, because I don't know before we wrap up, if there's anything else, one of the things that I wasn't sure about in season 2 that I didn't pick up so much in season 1 were these shadows, or not even subtle quotes that were coming out in the Second Age that we hear in the Third Age, in the Peter Jackson films. The first watch through of season 2, I didn't know what I thought about that. Like, do I like this, or am I going to get angry again? And I decided I like it. And I like it because it reminds me of the Old Testament foreshadowing the new. And so things were, they're saying these things. I like that echo, an echo into the future and an echo into the past. So that way of connecting. And I wonder if they were trying to do that. I don't want to end on the very low note of the Harfoots, but I wonder if they were trying to do that with Nori and her Sam Gamgean monologues, and it was falling flat. But just these subtle, it was subtle. This is the thing. Subtlety is so lacking today.
It was subtle.
Everything.
It was not in your face, self-referentially the way Star Wars does it.
Yeah. And also the way Nori was doing it, or every Harfoot, to the point where you're like, just stop it. But when you have these little subtle hints and you go, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah. And so then I do like that. I like it. And I don't want them to mess that up, but I want them to do something else.
I felt it was done tastefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Like a foreshadowing.
Yeah. I think when people other than Nori did it, it was done well.
Yeah. Literally, it was. Yeah. Cause she was just,
I saw, what was it? I think on Nerd of the Rings YouTube channel, he mentioned that people are calling Nori Frodette, which is
that's not even close.
Frodette.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I was like the Sam Gamgee wannabe.
Yeah.
Or not Sam Gamgee. But I just, all the way down to like her hair bothered me. And then the other one was Haecker. It's like, really? Who does that? Nobody does that. Just
we end where we begin.
Yes. There and back again.
Perfect. Unless you guys had any other wrap up thoughts because we're getting close on an hour and a half here.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. I'm going to miss Adar so much. Both seasons, every time he was on screen, they were the highlight of the show for me by far. And he's not going to be in season 3 or 4.
Justice for Adar.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, because I mean, Sauron's the big bad of this whole show, and whether they get to the 5-season War of the Last Alliance, like they're going to have mini bosses along the way. So, Farazan appears to be one, but I'm sure we'll meet other characters like that. So hopefully they can, create new characters that can be kind of these season-long villains that they can have multiple seasons they can have conflicts with that don't impede the overall story. Because if they're gonna do the 5 seasons and end with the War of the Last Alliance, there's like I kind of put in here some speculation. And this is what I've been saying. I think next season will kind of be the war with Sauron, Numenor war with Sauron, and then Elendil kind of becomes leader of the faithful while you have Dwarven Game of Thrones going on. So that'll kind of be all set up for then maybe season 4 is the Akalabeth. And then when that's over, then season 5 is kind of this war for the War of the Last Alliance. So we'll see if they get there. But yeah, I'm curious to see if we'll get any kind of I hope they don't do another surprise. There's another twisted elf that's been here the whole time. That's Adar's.
Where did he come from?
Whatever the word in brother or the word in Elvish is for brother, like that's his name or something. But we have the Dark Blue Wizard out there too, so maybe we'll see him as like a villain contending with some of these factions as well. But yeah, Adar was great, so we'll miss him.
Yeah, I'm surprised in Rune they didn't bring up a character who not a lot of people reference, but Kamul, the Easterling, who he's the only Nazgul who's named in the canon. And I was hoping he would be that masked guy, but he got his head bashed in, so I guess it wasn't him. So
maybe that's his dad, Kamul's dad.
Yeah, now he'll want revenge or whatever. This time.
We need more of those guys because they were so interesting. Like in the trailer, it was like, oh, we're finally going to get something like this is something they can really explore that hasn't been. Yeah. They don't have to, change anything. They can explore this in their own work, right? But then didn't really do it. So hopefully we'll see more of that.
Yeah, I would say more mini bosses, fewer girl bosses. Please,
yes. So I think that about does it for our kind of marathon wrap up. Except Jeff, you'd collected some feedback for us.
Yeah, we had a couple of feedbacks from Discord. So our friend Tammy LML said and these are both from our Fell Lands episode that it just came out a few days ago by the time of this recording. So feel free to send in more feedback. But she said, I've just got to say to all the hosts of Secrets of Middle Earth, y'all never fail to make me laugh and smile and sometimes speak aloud while I'm listening to the podcast, mostly in agreement, LOL. Thanks to all of you who make this happen. I always look forward to new episodes. Bravo, gentlemen. So thanks, Tammy. And then Zergtron, this was also in reference to Fell Lands. He said, I guess for my own positive feedback, I've just started today the Mordor and Fell Lands episode. I've been enjoying it so far. And while listening to the Tulkas and Melkor joke part, I've kept thinking of this. And then he posted a meme on the Discord of, have you seen the meme of the Undertaker, the wrestler, and AJ Styles, the wrestler, where AJ Styles is smiling and then the Undertaker's right behind him? So he was saying Melkor's AJ Styles and the Undertaker is Tulkas. So
nice. Being one of those people who did not grow up with wrestling, I was just like, I'm sure this means something, and I'm sure Jeff and Pat know what it means, so they would explain it to me.
I do too, because I used to love wrestling. But that's an 80s,
Yeah, and I was thinking if we're going to assign wrestlers, the Undertaker is more like Mandos than Tulkas. Tulkas, I feel like, is more like he's more like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
okay,
I've
I guess that I can
more
see,
of a Hulk Hogan kind of guy. Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's all the feedback. But yeah, feel free to send in more as we go.
All right. So that will do it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle Earth. But before we go, we'd of course like to take a moment to thank our great patrons who make this show possible, including Paul M.,
Aaron M., Fabian K., Stephen R., and Daniel V. Their generous donations help us to continue to create the Secrets of Middle-earth and all of our shows here at StarQuest, and you can join them at sqpn.com/give. And as Jeff said, we love to hear from our listeners, so you can definitely, join us on our Discord community or leave us a comment on Facebook or Twitter. You can send us an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube video of this podcast. And join us next time for the first in our 20-part series of the lands of Beleriand. Don't unsubscribe. I'm just kidding. But we will, at least the plan is to cover the next couple of chapters of the Silmarillion, probably 15 and 16. But until then, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Thanks, Thomas.
And Patrick Mason, thank you.
You're very welcome, and I am cautiously optimistic for season 3.
And Alix Murray, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. It was wonderful.
And once again, I'm Thomas Salerno. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Sacred Art. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at starquest.fm/art.